turn to a serious problem for President Trump and the nation. The problem is the substantial evidence against Trump regarding the crime of obstruction of justice, rigorously documented in the Mueller report. This evidence actually answers several of the mysteries of the Trump era, like why so many people lied, even without a conspiracy, and why Trump was so obsessed with thwarting the probe, and why Trump's own senior aides were so concerned that his presidency could literally end before his first term was supposed to end. The answers bring clarity, but they don't bring us any legal or civic peace, because there's no easy outcome when there is substantial criminal evidence against a president, as there is right now. The path to accountability is hard and uncertain. The path towards settling with no accountability is actually dangerous, because it can reward this or future presidents for obstruction. So there is no great satisfaction to be taken in this criminal evidence against Trump. But before America decides what, if anything, to do, we have to take in the evidence. We have to understand it. And if we can't even do that anymore, we may not have much of a functioning republic. So let's do that right now. And one way to begin, I would argue, is with the end of Mueller's factual analysis of the obstruction evidence, because after he laid out all the damning stories you've been hearing about in the last few days, Mueller then intones, quote, "It's important to view the president's pattern of conduct as a whole, which sheds light on the nature of the president's acts," meaning the corrupt intent and efforts looked worse taken together. And then Mueller notes that Trump worried his advanced knowledge of WikiLeaks' release of hacked material in the Trump Tower meeting itself could be seen as criminal activity by him or his family, meaning that Trump had the motive to obstruct even if there was no charged conspiracy, which is one of those mysteries. Then Mueller states obstruction is a crime even without an underlying crime, because it creates injury to the integrity of the justice system, the same regardless of whether a person committed an underlying wrong. And again, on Trump's criminal intent, Mueller notes Trump tried to thwart a thorough probe, fearing it would uncover facts about Trump that he could have understood to be crimes. These are Mueller's shots across the bow. Mueller's documenting the president tried to obstruct the probe repeatedly to avoid the discovery of possible crimes, and when those efforts were busted, he tried to cover them up, ordering his employees to lie, to cheat, to defy law enforcement, to falsify records, to cover up the way Trump had been covering up. And what I'm saying to you is not conjecture, and it's not opinion. It's the testimony of Donald Trump's own top aides. The footnotes of Mueller's obstruction section read like a cross between the warm-up speakers at a MAGA rally and the star panel at CPAC. Bannon, Lewandowski, Flynn, Kelly, Christie, McFarland, Hicks, Priebus, Sanders, McGahn, Miller. That's the evidence. You may remember that movie, When a Stranger Calls, and they say the scary part is that the calls were coming from inside the House. Mueller's obstruction evidence is coming from inside the White House. So I want to go through it with you briefly, because you may have heard about 10 or 11 acts, and maybe 5 or more show the evidence of obstruction, but these obstructive acts really boil down to 3 incriminating topics: protecting Mike Flynn from indictment, pressuring Jeff Sessions improperly, and Trump trying to oust and thwart Miller and covering that up. On Flynn, Mueller documents that Donald Trump knew his demand that the FBI stop probing Flynn was wrong. Quote, "The president cleared the room to make the request and later denied it, showing he knew his request was not a proper exercise of his power." On Jeff Sessions, Mueller documents Trump demanding aides help him get Sessions to take back over the Russia probe and the evidence that Trump had criminal intent. Mueller documents Trump's goal here was criminal, to restrict the scope of the probe and shield the president from it. And third, the most obvious evidence of the president potentially committing the crime of obstruction was trying to oust Mueller, kneecap Mueller, and then cover that up. And this is the part that has gotten a lot of attention. The stories are raw because Trump's own aides knew nothing ends a presidency like a massacre. Mueller showing Donald Trump's criminal intent starkly, quoting his own aides who believed Trump's attempt to oust Mueller was a high crime that could end his presidency, that it was crazy, that it was worth resigning over. Mueller documents that in that very moment, when Trump's order to fire Mueller was still secret, so nobody really knew what would come next. Think about that. It was a obviously intense and scary time to the people involved. Donald Trump's own lawyer not only defied the president's order, but next he called his lawyer because he knew he was risking going to jail for that potential crime if he wasn't careful. That's some of the best evidence of criminal obstruction a prosecutor can get. Now, lawyers can legally know about and represent a past crime. They cannot legally help you with a future crime. That would make them criminal conspirators, not lawyers, and that's exactly what Mueller's busting Trump on. McGahn saying, no, I won't help with a new crime. Also, I have to quit. Now, there are crimes, and then there are high crimes. Reckless driving is a real crime, but few people think it's impeachable for a president. But multiple Trump aides, according to Mueller, tell Trump that his order was actually a potential high crime. Chris Christie, in the Mueller report, warning Trump that ousting Mueller would lead Republicans in Congress to abandon him. And Trump covering up his effort to oust Mueller because he knew that the order was improper. What you're looking at right here is Mueller nailing the coffin with Donald Trump's own criminal intent, his, quote, awareness that the direction to oust Mueller was improper. That is what obstruction of justice looks like when all the evidence is in. Now, if a president obstructs, it's not up to his own DOJ employees to go arrest him. The Congress decides whether to act, and that's a fact every time Congress has considered an impeachment, from Johnson to Nixon to Clinton, a point that Republican members of Congress have made recently as they discuss their standards for obstruction charges against, yes, a president, President Clinton.
You don't even have to be convicted of a crime to lose your job in this constitutional republic. If this body determines that your conduct as a public official is clearly out of bounds in your role.
We don't want a president lying in office, that we don't want obstruction of justice.
The president has engaged in a persistent pattern and practice of obstruction of justice. The allegations are grave. The investigation is legitimate.
I am concerned about a president under oath being alleged to have committed perjury. And in America, and Supreme Court and the American people believe no one is above the law.
No one is above the law. That was a throwback, Jeff Sessions. That wording is what ends the Mueller report. Sessions was talking about a single perjury count. Mueller's got 5 incidents of obstruction. So if that was obvious then, why is there any question about it now that Congress considers obstruction? Well, one answer is that Donald Trump's new Attorney General broke with past practice to announce that he'd reached his own decision about Mueller's findings before even briefing Congress on them. But now that we have the Mueller report, everyone can see the evidence that, 1, Mueller did not find evidence to charge an election conspiracy. 2, Mueller did find substantial evidence of Trump obstruction. 3, Barr didn't tell the whole truth about all of that. And 4, Bob Mueller explicitly refers to Congress deciding obstruction cases against a president, something Barr obviously left out. So take that all together, everything I've just presented to you as facts in the Mueller report. What do we do about it? Right now, there are people who are trying to predict the, quote, politics of impeachment. That is futile. The D.C. establishment couldn't even predict the 2016 election, nor could the media. And there are thousands of people who focus on trying to figure that out full time. Nobody really knows how an impeachment process would proceed or shape minds or ultimately end. And comparing what happened with Bill Clinton in 1998 is only slightly more relevant than comparing this to the Whigs or the Renaissance. This is a different world. Trump is different. America's different. If insanity is doing the same thing over for different results, political insanity is living through the past 3 years and applying a pre-2015 worldview to make these decisions. And more importantly, Congress shouldn't even use political calculations for these highest constitutional obligations. Sure, politics can touch everything, but I ask you tonight, now that this report is setting in, have we become so cynical we don't even ask our leaders to aspire to live up to their oaths when they vote to send us to war, when they evaluate national security, or when they decide if the president is a crook? The public can demand more. And this public 2-year fascination with Mueller has some constructive features because it's highlighted fact-finding, integrity, and using rules rather than bluster. But it's not all positive. I want to say that tonight. This partisan hunger for Mueller to find what some people want to hear also risks blunting the import of what he didn't find. No election conspiracy, no criminal syndicate led by Don Jr. But the other issue is the passion for Mueller had some people thinking he might do what he wasn't assigned to do, which was make these decisions, these tough calls for other branches of government. Bill Barr was wrong to claim he could decide himself if Trump obstructed. Mueller would have been wrong to do that as well. Difference, of course, is Mueller followed that rule, Barr did not. And that tells us something about both men. But in honoring that line, Bob Mueller was respecting the Constitution's role for Congress to decide any high crimes. So what would it say about Congress if after all that, after Mueller's 22-month-long probe, busting foreign interference crimes and a record-breaking number of indictments of a president's advisors and the lies and the obstruction by other people, and then this documenting substantial evidence of Donald Trump's obstruction, what would it say if after all of this, Congress takes that evidence and announces, well, we can't even begin proceedings to assess these facts because the politics might be bad for us? I'm going to tell you something. If that is how this all ends, a whimper topped with a blatant confession that it's all based on self-interest, then the responsibility will lie not only with the president who's saddled with this criminal evidence against him, but with those who had a chance to act here and now and instead said, well, we won't use our power to stand up to this. We're afraid of the politics. Isn't fear part of what got us here? Aren't Democrats in Congress the ones who spent 2 years asking, when would Republicans stand up to Donald Trump regardless of their politics? Now, my observations to you tonight are not a call for a particular outcome. We don't even know what House proceedings and testimony and fact-finding would uncover or lead to, or what that ultimate vote might entail if there were a vote. But if you're watching this unfold and you're thinking, wait, isn't there something to do with Mueller's findings after all this? Yes, there is. If you're thinking, wait, I watched the news, didn't we know all along the DOJ doesn't indict the president, so the whole thing was always going to be up to Congress? Yes, you're right. And if you're thinking facts matter most when people make facts matter, yes, they do. Anyone telling you the facts don't matter, or telling you to just move on tonight, or telling you you don't need to bother reading the Mueller report, that sounds like someone who might be trying to hide something. And as Bob Mueller so meticulously documents, when you do it in court, trying to hide and lie is an element of corrupt intent. In life, it's just a sign there may be a whole lot more work to do. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.